Hi, this is Bryan Caplan and Richard Hanania, and today we're going to play a little game. Richard's one of Richard's most famous pieces is called "Why the Media is Good and Honest." It got a lot of people angry at him. I think it lost him a lot of subscriptions. His thesis is that, contrary to popular belief, except on a short list of issues, namely race, gender, and sexuality, the media is actually really good. I then wrote a piece which also became one of my all-time most popular pieces, saying that Richard's wrong, and especially when Richard posted the challenge of compared to what? My answer is compared to silence. I think the media is so bad, it would be better if they just were quiet, didn't say anything. I think they actually, on balance, make us dumber. Now, the part of my critique, it's not that I think the media is actually lying. I think that insofar as you apply the narrow test of is what they said literally true, normally does pass. Rather, my thinking is that by selecting the stories that they do, the tone that they do, the word choice they have, they are making an overwhelming suggestion which leads people down the wrong intellectual path. A lot of the inspiration for this comes from a thought experiment by Mike Humer, which goes like this. He says, imagine there's a school and where all they do all day is tell their students true bad things about Jews. So every lesson, all day long, is like, and then there was a Jew who stole some candy from a little child. There was a Jew who went and made bad lollipops. There was a Jew who ran away in the middle of a dangerous fight and got his comrades killed. And then someone says, hey, this is really biased. You're preaching anti-Semitism. Their defense is, oh, no, it's all true. And the point of the thought experiment is, of course, it's anti-Semitic, and of course, it's horribly biased. It's not a question of just whether the things that you say are literally correct. It's a question of whether or not you're creating an incorrect impression of the world, whether you're promoting a false worldview by only talking about some kinds of facts that are really maybe not especially important compared to others. So once I was at a party and I actually was talking to a famous Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He told me I was completely wrong to think the media was heavily biased. I challenged him. I said, let's just get the Washington Post right here, and I will tell you, based upon each headline, how horribly biased this rag is. He, at least in my memory, like I just had him on the ropes the whole time. So now I've got Richard, and he's willing to try the same challenge. We're actually going to do a bunch of Richard's favorite media sources. We have promised to not read any of the news today until right now. So right now, if we've kept our promises, we will look at major headlines. We'll talk about them. Richard, I think, is going to defend them as good and honest, mostly, with some exceptions. And I'm going to probably say that almost everything we see is terrible. Do you want to add anything, Richard?
Yeah. I mean, the question is, what's the goal? Well, what is someone reading the news for? We have to sort of establish that premise first.
Okay.
Are you trying to be entertained? If you're entertained, maybe it's good enough. We can frame it as maybe you're trying to understand something about the world. Let's say develop sensible policy views, an understanding of the world. Is that the sort? Is that?
Yeah. Or how about just a sensible statistical verdict on what's happening to humanity?
Okay, what's happening? Well, that's a pretty high step. Like you would be covering the decline of absolute poverty. We know the media.
Yeah, exactly. But you're not going to see many stories on that.
You will not see a story on that. But let's say, I mean, we have to.
If there's 20 stories a year about famine, 0 about decline and hunger, it's a lot of my story is like that's very misleading. Yeah. It is making people dumber by virtue of the fact that they're reading your true coverage and giving them and making their worldview of the world more false.
But they're not even that many. I don't think we'll see any stories on famine.
Yeah, that's why I said 20 per year. It's not like it's going to be on the cover every day.
But like, let's say I have a special interest, like given what the news covers, I go to the newspaper because I happen to care about the things that they write about. Like I care about what's going on in Congress. We have to preface, I care about Russia and Ukraine more than some conflict in the middle of Africa. That's, I think, is a reasonable test, because if it's like they're just not covering the most important stories in the world, I agree with that. I would not argue against that.
All right. Well, why don't we just dive in and just see what happens?
Okay.
Let's do the I'm going to start with the Gray Lady, New York Times.
Sure. Let's do this. Okay. So,
all right.
Okay. So here's one. Let's see what's here.
Yeah, we got to get rid of that.
Okay. And by the way, listeners, there's a video you should watch the video because we're sharing screens. If you're just listening to the podcast, you could probably still follow along and you'll probably get something if you just listen. But this is a podcast that's meant to be watched. Okay, and so me and Bryan are now looking at the New York Times. Okay, Supreme Court appears skeptical of arguments to kick Trump off state ballots. Okay, that seems like a reasonable story.
Yeah, actually, I think that one's okay. I mean, this whole block looks okay, actually, because it is something of world historic importance as to whether Trump gets kicked off. I don't see any obviously biased language, so yeah, I'm going to give a pass on that.
Okay, and then there's actually a live stream here. You can see if we wanted to listen to. We could be listening to it at the time.
Go on. Okay.
Special counsel seeks no criminal charges in Biden's classified records case. Okay, that seems. I don't think that's biased.
Yeah, reasonable.
Okay. The president not being charged. The media's off to a good start.
Yes. All right, now we get to.
Let's go to side
over here.
The race is on to stop Ozempic. How do you pronounce this? Ozempic. This new weight loss drug. That seems important. I want coverage of that. It's going to end obesity, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, there I would just say this language of the race is on makes it sound like there's going to be an incredible effort rather than that. And I would also suggest that government isn't going to go and impede it. That there's just a general agreement we want to go and speed ahead with this. Whereas I think, as you and I know, if someone did come up with some new drugs that are relevant, then probably they're going to have to go through some long approval process. So I think there is in the background some general sense of we've got basically functional policy here, and we're all in this together to go and help human health, rather than accepting of sort of the limits and the contours of the policy space is what you're saying, right? And, just like an implicit functionalism, the system works. Science and government are in holding hands to go and solve human problems.
Let's kick out of Jim Chase should all want to solve the common issue. Okay, so. Yeah, it's it points to market solutions. Yeah,
although you may also notice that they've managed to immediately turn this great positive into something we're worrying about. Like, they like the subheading was that interesting. If you go back to that,
yeah. Well, let me go back. Okay, let's go. Subheading is Jim Chase.
They all want to solve a common issue among people who take weight loss drugs.
Yeah,
there's going to be barely any mention of. Isn't it great that there are people taking all these weight loss drugs and we're getting obesity down, getting diabetes down? Let's immediately switch over to complaining.
I agree. You don't see that. You don't see like just an analysis of like how much money will be saved on X, Y, Z, right? Yeah, there's a pessimistic bias. So there's a liberal bias people worry about. There's a pessimistic bias.
Yeah, of course. Like doom and gloom. Everything's going downhill. It's always focused on the worst stuff. All right. Then we've got Israel and Ukraine aid bill inches ahead. You wouldn't say inches ahead unless you were in favor, right?
Inches ahead.
You would never say the Holocaust inches ahead, something like that.
No, because that would be too Russia inches ahead. Yeah, maybe you're right. Russia inches ahead of Ukraine. Like, could I imagine that? Probably not. Russia inches ahead. Yeah, that's okay. I think I agree with that. Okay, a little
and then next one down, he stumbles and is deep in Republicans' disarray. Right. So in order for this to be true, the first step we'd agree there's a disarray, and then we add on, and the disarray is getting worse. That's fact.
Stumbles have deepened. Yeah, stumbles is also subjective. I don't think everyone would say stumbles. But okay, so they're a little bit.
So over on the right side, I'm seeing the political perils of a black Jewish rift over the war in Gaza.
Yeah, this is opinion. I think.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Still funny in that.
Look at this one. The profit crime in El Salvador is stunning, but
it has a dark side.
At least they admit it's stunning. I mean, that's pretty good.
Actually, it's one of the fairest things they could possibly say.
Yeah. I did listen to some kind of Bloomberg. Podcast like on the news, and they were like pretty positive actually towards success has an effect. If Milei in Argentina sees massive economic growth, it'll get covered positively. It hasn't been that negative, and I think the same with Bukele and his crime crackdown.
I mean, I think what's much more important in terms of someone the media internationally doesn't like getting better treatment is just winning. So you might have noticed that after Orban won re-election in Hungary and Erdogan won re-election in Turkey, there was a large reduction in criticism. It's like, well, I mean, they won democratically, so we kind of are being jerks just to keep complaining about whatever terrible things they're doing. And I think that Bukele, since he just got reelected with over 80%, he's also probably getting a boost from that of, like, we don't want to be against democracy. And
Zelensky removes his top general. Okay.
Yeah.
Ukraine's creative use of weapons carries promise and risk. Okay, so this is, I think you're right. I think you would not. I always imagine if it was Russia. Russia's weapons have promise and risk. You're from the perspective of the side you want to win, right? Their promise and risk. Russia's creative use of weapons would be danger and potential for gain.
Yeah. And then how about go down to the Blinken visit puts U.S.-Israeli tensions on full display?
Yeah, that's one spin. Yeah, I mean, they are especially these foreign policy narratives. They really are constructed. Like they have these analysis articles, like this one about Mike Johnson. It's basically, it's a spin article. It's self-consciously a spin article, but they put the word analysis there, just to make it like
reporting opinion is fact.
Yeah, exactly. And they're usually they're usually valid perspectives. I'm sure there are U.S.-Israeli tensions. It's not made up. And the Republicans are pretty disorganized and in disarray.
Right. I mean, as to what would count as full display, it's like suppose that they mutually through their ambassadors. Would that be an even greater than full display? So then how is this the full display?
Well, let's click on the story. Maybe they have. Maybe they did get into a fist fight or something. Let's see what are they fighting? Sat down with American officials, especially cautious optimism about Gaza. Mr. Netanyahu appeared intent on delivering a fiery message aimed at his domestic audience. Okay, so Netanyahu gave a tough speech. He denounced.
Oh my God, he preempted him. You know what that means.
Like his fifth visit to the Middle
They become increasingly.
I don't know if that's full display. I don't know if that's full display. Yeah, you sort of seems like you have to look for it. You have to
immediately. Like, admittedly, some of this is just wanting to get attention. And they're like whose law is it that anytime there's a media article that ends with a question mark, the answer is no? There's a name to that for that law. I can't remember. I'm forgetting what the name of the law is. Anyway,
here's a white person.
Will the U.S. experience a Great Depression this year? Question mark. The answer will be no if you read the article.
So this is called this section. I've never seen this before. The Great Read. Okay, that's a great sell. Her son vanished after a 1980 run-in with police. She wants answers. It's a white guy, so with police you have to specify.
Yeah, surprising.
Investigators have pursued many leads.
But some critics say
is the most obvious one. Oh, which is I guess probably the police murder.
Guy eerily looks like a relative of mine, but looks like my brother in the 70s. But he's fine.
Okay. So I mean, I might read this at some point. That's not seems interesting enough, I guess. Mark Meadows became the least trusted man in Washington. Okay, that's pretty biased. I mean,
based upon they got like a full examination of the list of all people in Washington, and then a thorough survey on how much everybody's trusted. He was the very last.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like sometimes you see the bias with the Trump people around Trump, and I think it's hard to cover it in an unbiased way because Trump just lies so much, and he does like such silly. Like if you just describe what he says, it's crazy. I mean, it really does sound crazy. And if you just point that out, it really seems like you're hating Trump. But I think that Trump and sort of what he demands of people around him is actually pretty extreme.
There was this traditional journalistic procedure of just never weighing in on whether what politicians were saying was true and just saying he says this, she said that. This then did lead around 2000 to people like Paul Krugman saying the article titles are equivalent to opinions vary on whether the sun will rise tomorrow. And that's, I think, why there has been this switch to this strange language of falsely said without proof. Well, all right, yeah, of course a lot of this stuff is false and said without proof, but guess what? That applies to people you do like as well. It's you have some strange standards about, like we'll call it falsely said under these conditions, but not under these other conditions. They're never going to say Hillary Clinton falsely said that women are the greatest losers in war. The quote, right? True. Yeah, so women are the greatest losers because they lose husbands, sons. It's like falsely said when in fact the truth is that men are the greatest losers in war. You're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's true. I think. Yeah, I mean, often they do. If you make your case, and if a politician makes his case intelligently and that's connected to Earth, like the Hillary Clinton thing is not a controversy. If Republicans actually, it'd be interesting if Republicans actually made that an issue that comment about women in war. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would. I don't know. It's one of those. Well, I mean, I gave the example of gender, races, things
Yes.
that
Yeah, like you listed. So that's the area where you consider the media unreliable. I definitely agree. It's especially bad there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry. Can you go back? There's one more that was just fun. Let's see. Where were? Oh yeah. Audit finds fatal lapses in mental health program meant to curb violence. So it's been hindered by shoddy oversight and bureaucratic delays. An audit found the idea maybe it just wouldn't have worked even if there hadn't been any issues with oversight or bureaucratic delays. That's essentially they're just repeating the complaints of people who like the program as fact when it's not working very well. If you were to go and say, well, even if it was, would it be such a good idea? What's the just to say what's a good literature review on the evidence on the effect of mental health programs on violence?
Look, here's one. Why the cost of Biden's climate law keeps going
All right.
up. So it's an anti-environmentalist, anti-Biden.
Yeah. So
goes against bias. Yeah.
So that seems that does surprise me. I will say that.
Well, forecasters, they say that clean energy initiatives incentives will be more effective than they were. So they have a.
Okay. So you read the subtitle and then you get a different part.
But you have to read that. I mean, who knows the title? That's
doubled.
It's effectively doubled.
Let's see. Nearly all be attributed. So this is more along the lines of you've probably heard from bad people that it's costing more, but what you need to understand is it's costing more because it's better than previously realized.
It might be actually good for
So
read for the U.S. economy.
Although it does violate my rule that you can just look at the headlines and see the bias. This is one you had to at least read the first couple paragraphs to see the bias.
I mean, I don't know. This is an accurate portrayal of what's happening.
Could be. If you're a fan of Alex Epstein's Fossil Future, as I am, then you're not going to give that too much credence. But
conservative climate action could
most people have yet to read the book.
Yeah. I don't know enough to say what's the objectively true. Yeah. Here's trending. Here's just looks like a Trump election immunity ruling annotated. There's no Negroni. Who's Negroni? A person or
the Negroni?
Huh?
Yeah, I don't know what the Negroni. Yeah.
Let's say okay.
Okay. All right. So this is just some human interest thing about a drink.
Women who caused fatal buggy crash. Twin take blame. That's pretty funny. Woman who caused Okay. So that's the Times. We've gone through basically.
All right. So overall looked a bit better than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the Times is actually better than the Post. If you let's go to the Post.
All right. Let's do the Post.
I think the Post is the opinion has a lot of.
Yes. Democracy dies in darkness, right?
Yeah.
And this is basically your normal media diet, correct?
The Economist. I mean, this and the Economist. I don't, like Twitter is a big curator. Mm-hmm. So maybe you should go to Twitter, just see what pops up. But yeah, Twitter is a big curator of my news. And so, but if I search websites, probably New York Times, Economist, and then Washington Post is probably the order. And so here's warming. Right. Are we doomed?
It does fit with that. If you put a question mark in your headline, the answer is no. But
yeah.
Yes. The poised, again, that is seems the deliberate word choice to say what a horrible thing. It's like a wolf is poised to go and eat a deer. You don't say that something that someone is, at least you would rarely say that someone is poised to do anything good.
Yeah. Let's see what else is here. Here's some human interest thing. Cruise ships. Yes. You have the PAC votes to advance Ukraine package after border deal fails. Okay. Mm-hmm. Supreme Court. Okay. Let's see. Now here you get opinion. So you don't get that much news. Actually, Washington Post is very much more opinion heavy than the New York Times. The opinion is much more prominent. It's much more aggressive. It's in your face.
Yes. Right now, these small ones, like your 5 Marines killed in helicopter crash during California storm, this is very typical of the media in general, where whether or not an accident matters depends very much on how much readers sympathize with the victims, which you might say, well, of course that's going to happen. But it's important to realize how much this tend to make people adopt a certain worldview where certain kinds of accidents are really important and you're a terrible person if you just don't think it's that important or worth worrying about. And other kinds of stuff just doesn't really matter. So whatever your views on Israel-Palestine, I don't think they're going to go and have 5,000 times as many articles on 25,000 Palestinians dying as you have on 5 Marines. Just not going to do it. So it's like, well, like those 5 Marines, people really want to hear about those, whereas Palestinians, like they're just not a sympathetic group, so we're not going to talk about them.
Well, I mean, I do think the Palestinians have been getting more.
Not 5,000 times. They're not getting 5,000 times the attention.
No, the American soldiers could become before Palestinians, but Palestinians are becoming before most of the rest of the world, for sure. Given how many other conflicts are going on. But they jockey Biden and Trump jockey for an edge amid the rubble of the border deal. Let's see what they say here.
What a ridiculous headline.
Jockey for an edge. Right on.
Amid the rubble. So let's just put in as many words that prejudge the situation as possible.
Amid the rubble of the border deal. Has reshaped the political dynamics.
Wouldn't they have had to have built the wall for there to be rubble?
Yeah. Well, the rubble of I guess they were building the bill. It's a strange metaphor. Public immigration tax. At
least it suggests that the wall was built and then something happened.
No, it's not about the.
I know, but in terms of what the reader might misinterpret, I mean, it's just.
You think a reader
would
the
border deal? Yeah, all right. So it's the deal rather than the wall itself, but.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be. Yeah, you'd have to be not paying much attention as a reader, I think. Okay, so the Post. Hey, let's look at the top stories. Nikki Haley loses to none of these candidates. Okay, this is just election results. Biden is expected McDaniels to leave. Okay, so this is these things we're just skipping over. Yes. I mean, like they're going to
see this one. Is gun violence really the leading cause of death for children? Like, was there even a question that it could be?
I guess. Well, maybe they're fact checking it.
All right.
Direction. See,
let's
see.
Let's
see. Children, White House. Okay, so they are fact checking the White House.
All right, let's see. Okay,
the Pinocchio test. We'll leave this unrated. Wait, what?
You'll leave this.
And teens, because they mean teens. When all motor vehicle accidents, motor vehicle continues to exceed firearm deaths for children.
Yes.
If only traffic crashes are counted, but it's probably true because they're approach. Okay, so I guess actually it is one of the leading causes of deaths for children. Yes. But it's I think the point is adolescents are more likely to be shot.
But also that children have such a low death rate, it's easy to be number one.
Yeah, well, that's a big deal too. So they're fact checking and saying this is a sort of unrated. Let's see if maybe they do mention that, like children just don't die. But I would not expect that.
Motor vehicle deaths still rank as number one, have for 6 decades. Surge in firearm sales. All right, let's see. Okay.
More than half of the state's people. Which virus blah, blah, blah. Excluding children under the age of 1. And others study.
Yes, let's count 17-year-olds as children, but throw them out. Broader narrow definition, no right answer. And also, just to make an economist point, they're not, I'm going to bet they're not even going to consider that maybe guns actually save some kids' lives by deterrence.
Yeah.
It's not going to go into the accounting.
Yeah, but this CDC data shows gun violence leading cause of death among children 1 to 17, as well as teens 18 to 19. Because then with the age group children, adolescents. And so I guess if you look at children, right, if you look at 1-year-olds, I guess they die for other reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Look, the focus. I mean, I agree with you, what you might say here. Mm-hmm. The focus on gun violence. Mm-hmm.
They could talk about obesity. They could talk about just the difficulty of getting approval for research on longevity treatments. But
they could talk about how safe kids are. Yeah, they could talk about the difficulties of FDA. They could talk about crime statistics. Yeah. They could
have how about an article on how most Americans still say that it's good that people die. There have been a few surveys on life extension. The usual view is we shouldn't do it. What kind of people am I in a country with? They want death to continue? Yeah. These people
something along the lines of poll results show disturbing pattern in American something like that. Yeah, you can imagine that. Yes. It was
a blind acceptance of human mortality.
Bryan, I think your beef with the media is that they're not all libertarians. I think that which you consider reason, which I consider synonymous with reason to a large extent, and I know that they're not. Right.
So so there is the political issue. I would say it's not so much not being libertarians; it's just being very woke. So look, I know a lot of libertarians who are normal people in the sense that all they do all day is complain. If you go and read libertarian media, a lot of it will be the sky is falling, and I don't agree with that either. So I don't think it's not just a political issue. A lot of it is just one of statistical literacy. I was just at a libertarian conference, and when you go there, you come across all kinds of nuts with all kinds of we're in the middle of a hyperinflation. Like, no, we're not. And the error is very rarely that they think that things are good when they're bad. It's thinking that things are bad when they're good.
Yeah, So the media is not techno-optimist libertarians. That's true.
Just to be fair, there's plenty of techno-optimists who are not libertarian at all. They just know the facts. Yeah. Probably most pro-nuclear people are just pro-science people. They're not especially libertarian.
Yeah.
Most libertarians would be more pro-nuclear, although even there, it's a lot easier for libertarians to say, well, isn't it all with government subsidies? And it's like, well, yeah, because given the other regulations, they can't build it without government help. But if it were a laissez-faire situation, then I think there's little doubt that nuclear plants would be ubiquitous.
Yeah. I think you're right. Okay, so you're thinking like if a person goes and they're better off not listening to the media. Now, it's your average citizen. We have to put ourselves in their minds. Mm-hmm. They probably think that the world is getting worse and that like gun violence is a huge problem.
Well, how much of that would they believe if the media was just silent? If this is a case where it's very plausible that it is a moral panic caused by the media, if people just had to wait and hear it by word of mouth, most people would never hear anything, and they would have a more statistically accurate view.
Gun violence, like school shootings, most people would never hear of one.
Right,
anyone they knew or their community.
Yes,
that's true. I think that there's also a kind of there's an unseen sort of effect. So the media also. Like if someone just comes to your town, if like the president shoots somebody or somebody comes and just poisons the river in your town, right? You probably wouldn't hear about that from word of mouth either.
It's the river in your town. No, depends upon how big the town is.
Maybe you'd hear about it anyway. Maybe somebody would blog about it. Getting accurate information about like who did it and all the other details might be a little bit difficult. And so there are things potentially. I'm trying to think like what is the last thing that the media really rung the bell on? I guess the opioids, maybe. But I don't think we should be doing anything about opioids. I think that we should probably let people have as many opioids as they want. Yeah, but I am struggling to come up with an example. But they must exist. There must be things that people would do that they don't do because the media is watching them.
Probably actually some of the most positive effects of the media are just on reporting the weather. So the media will say, leave your faucets dripped tonight. You're not going to get that in California if we get over here. It's like, all right, I don't see the harm of reminding people to set their faucets drip so their pipes don't burst. It's actually a risk that has happened to me, so it's not completely out of the statistical blue that it would occur.
You keep your
windows against a hurricane.
I've never heard of this. You keep your faucets dripping?
Yeah, like you grew up in Chicago. You never heard of this?
No, nobody did that.
No way.
No. Never heard it.
Maybe you got better insulation because of
maybe it's not as swampy as the East Coast.
I don't know. That's pretty weird to me. Like if your insulation was good enough, it wouldn't be a problem. It might be that it's your marginal areas that freeze occasionally, and so we don't have the insulation that you would have, and that's why we have the problem. We happen to have unusually bad weather. But even like anytime you tell people there's going to be hurricanes, stay indoors. All right.
Yeah,
reasonable enough. And there's probably some people that are so clueless that they would do it.
So,
all right. Let's see. Anything else for the Washington Post, or should we move on to?
We can move on, I'm still thinking here about. Like I feel like there must be some company that's poisoned somebody.
There was the Tylenol poisoning, of course, back when you were a baby or not even a baby. That one, again, just created a giant moral panic that every single drug has to be super safe. Never mind that someone could just inject poison into an orange if they wanted to. But don't inject poison into oranges, readers.
Maybe the idea is if there was, maybe there's an idea we're too hypervigilant, and if something was killing a lot of people, there would be it would maybe the incentive structure of the legal system, and lawyers, they have their own problems, trial lawyers, but perhaps in this case they would find the really bad stuff. They would have the incentive to find the really bad stuff, and maybe you don't need the media. Maybe
so like the opioids is an interesting case because the body count really is staggering. But the researchers that I've talked to have said that the correct story is not what the media says, and really it was when they started trying to crack down on prescribed or on prescription painkillers. Yeah. And like I said, like up till then, it wasn't really that bad, and there were of course enormous offsetting gains of opioids, which is they really do effectively reduce pain a lot. I had a friend who was getting chemo. He actually was able to publish a piece in USA Today. This is the great Steve Horowitz, who did die of leukemia, I believe. But anyway, he did a piece saying, I'm on heavy opioids, and without these opioids, I couldn't get out of bed, and my pain is so bad. So that was good. But then the media did go and start scapegoating the prescription opioids, which then did lead to a lot of people switching over to illegal ones. And that's, according to the researchers I know, is what's really caused the truly large increase in deaths. I'll say, media screwed up, and they created this.
You're making an interesting case, Brian. You're making an interesting case. I think from the reference point of the conservative critiques of the media, it's that those are wrong. I think your critiques of the media are closer to correct. Let's move on. I'll continue to think. Okay, let's go to the Economist.
All right. Economists I like better, so I like
the
Economist. Yes, definitely. Like I don't think of them as being terrible in the same way that I think of major American newspapers as being terrible. Yes.
So this is Xi Jinping. Okay, big issue, China. Yes. Big economy, important question. Dismissal of Valery Zaluzny, the general in Ukraine.
And then you have one of these bizarre media subtitles where it's like, well, it's like, unfortunately, risk getting it wrong.
Yeah.
But essentially, like when you say that, what you're really saying is it's a high risk, it's a notable risk. We're questioning this decision because it's not just the trivial greater than zero probability that's a problem here.
Settlers and their political power in Israel. Okay, that seems informative. Poland, Donald Tusk tries to restore Poland.
That sounds like they've taken a side.
But I mean,
restore rule of law would have to be that the rule of law was ended previously in Poland.
But maybe it was. I don't know. I don't know enough about Poland. Maybe it was. I don't know.
I don't know. Been there 3 times, talked to a lot of people. Even the people that hated the existing government didn't say
you experienced
rule of law equals 0 now in Poland.
Yeah, you felt the rule of law there. Okay, he's trying to restore the rule of law. Europe is importing a solar boom. I mean, the Economist does this because I trust this article on the solar boom or whatever. I trust that it's going to have charts. It's going to have charts that are sensible and tell us something important. Like they are very good at that. They're also they
charts.
Have some.
Where's the charts?
Oh well, this one apparently didn't. So maybe there's a number somewhere there. I was looking for the charts, but they also sometimes they sometimes report good social science, but they also sometimes report naive social science. Like when people find those democracy scores, I mean, they sometimes do run with those, which are pretty ridiculous. But there's good and bad.
Yeah, as you might know, so I'm definitely less anti-democracy scores than you are. I mean, like obviously there's a lot of arbitrariness, and like why Singapore gets dinged for having popular policies that other democracies don't have seems unreasonable, but
they don't like Bukele. See, they're sort of crushing unconstitutional victory. What's that?
That one I'll actually defend. So, like, they did actually have it in their constitution that you can't run. There's no re-election of the president, and then somehow he managed to get over that.
Yeah, well, he changed the law, I suppose.
Yeah. So so I mean, here a lot of the facts. So you've got first tried negotiating with the gangs. You may remember your own coverage saying his negotiation consisted in you can get some McDonald's if you tell your guys to stand down. It's not. Yeah. I think that actually was that literally like part of what was going on according to you.
It was. They were denying them food and stuff. They were like,
but like you can get some McDonald's and in exchange you call off the dogs.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was more my recollection, more sticks than carrots. Yes. Like you're not going to have anything as long as things, are bad.
But especially, it wasn't like normally when you hear a deal between the government and the mafia, it's something like, we'll put your competitors out of business and you've got free reign. It's not, we're going to arrest your leader and then give him McDonald's if he keeps his voice.
It's very weird because you look you cover Ecuador and it's like, oh, the gangs have taken over the jails. Like, why? Like, why are the gangs like there's one gang leader who's like making music videos in jail. That's like, you have these people under arrest. How does it work? Like, it's so dysfunctional where like you can arrest them, but like you can't stop them from making music videos. It's a very, very sort of strange thing. So Bukele somehow cracked this nut and like understanding how he did it. And it seems to me like it's corruption and all that, but it's gotta be liberal ideology, which like these people have lawyers and it's just like ridiculous where like the civil liberties stuff has just run amok in these cases. A combination of like gangs on the floor plus like high-minded sort of civil libertarian ideals. And it just seems like a terrible combination.
I mean, probably there's also increasing returns. If you go and arrest half the gang members, then the remaining gang members can go and threaten the families of the prison guards to make sure the music videos continue. Whereas when you arrest 99%, then it's like, yeah, you've sort of lost your leverage on anybody at this point. And so it's going to be pretty hard for you to threaten anybody with anybody because like all your people are here.
It has to be mass. I think that's probably a good point. It has to be a mass arrest. If anyone is left behind, if anyone's left to threaten the families, then they can get to them. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Maybe you need the numbers is the point. And you can't, of course, you're going to be overbroad. You're not going to be able to perfectly identify every member of a gang in a country, and you just have to decide whether it's worth it or not. I see these coverage of Bukele and El Salvador, and it's like, well, can't afford lawyers for them all, and it's like, okay, like they're a third world. They don't have like a mass, sort of a mass of lawyers just sitting around who can defend everyone. They don't have the court system. They don't have the capacity. At some point, you've got to make choices.
It's kind of the one where if you imagine going back to a really simple 19th century U.S. law. So like in the movie True Grit, they show what Western trials were like. And I think it's actually pretty plausible where like there's pretty much no lawyers and the judges only know the rudiments of the law anyway. And then it's at the point that a person can defend himself because you don't need to know anything more complicated. It's like, well, what happened? Well, here's what happened. Okay, well, that's illegal. Or it's like three people say that he beat him. No, I didn't. Yeah. Well, but we know those three guys. They're believable. All right, so punish him.
Yeah, it's like the
like if due process were stripped down to a really bare bones level, again, you probably could go and get some kind of a trial. But the idea that the modern American trial is the only philosophically acceptable kind of trial is such a weird one.
Well, it's a weird thing, right? Like the Miranda rights. Like, okay, you want to tell us what you did. You have a right not to do that. That's a very dumb thing to do. Just keep it from us. Like, well, why would we do that? Like, it's just ridiculous, right? Like, some of these things are pretty silly. And we can afford them because we're so rich and, safe. But I guess a lot of these countries probably can't. So why is there so much violence in Balochistan? I don't know why there is. I would like to know. It seems like a violent region.
I'll definitely admit that's the kind of thing where it's not like they're pandering for readers with an article about Balochistan.
Yeah. Balochistan, that's like a huge population. It's like one of the biggest ethnic groups in the world that doesn't have a state. But you never hear about it, and it's pretty important. It's right there, Balochistan.
Very recently, you did just because of the mutual retaliation of Iran and Pakistan on each other's Balochistan, what do you want to call them? Let's see. The correct word is stand-ins or proxy.
The Economist is. You know what? Maybe I should just stop reading the Times and just go to the Economist because the Economist is a good curator of what's interesting and important in the world. Here's Pakistan. You don't get this much Pakistan coverage. Pakistan's a pretty big country. Middle East stuff.
Even there, why Iran is hard to intimidate. It's like, is it hard to intimidate? How hard has anybody tried? And the other thing is in the 80s, they were really hard to intimidate. The Ayatollah just kept fighting in this horrible war. And then there's an interesting question, what about the next generation? Are they going to be the same or different? I have this pet theory that revolutionary generations really are fanatics, and they often will just steer their country right into danger because the reason why they are where they are is because they were willing to risk their lives. But the second generation, on the other hand, usually a lot more careerist and just trying to keep their power going.
You're probably thinking of like Stalin and Lenin versus Khrushchev and Brezhnev, or you're thinking of Mao versus Deng.
Yeah,
I mean,
Deng.
yeah, this is and the Chinese now are just a typical dictatorship at this point. Yeah, I think that's clearly right.
Yes. Say like, if the Taliban had held power for one more generation, then the old guys would be dead. And then when the U.S. says hand over bin Laden, like, yes, sir. Okay, here he is. Rather than let's go down in flames. Or,
I don't know.
The real story is that we want proof, but it's like, all right.
It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question because I think religion is these world religions are probably stickier than an ideology like communism, which seems to come and go with each generation.
Well, there's always the difference between the fundamentalists and the pragmatists.
Yeah,
it's not like the generals in Egypt are not Muslim, but they're not anywhere near as into it as the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah. I mean, the keeping women at home is really hard. I think even by the way, you probably might have seen some stories now. The Taliban, they're still tough on women, but like even some of them send their daughters to school abroad. So like it has soft. I mean, they now have been around for a few generations with the war, and a lot of it's the same people who've been on top. And it seems like there is kind of that kind of softening, but it's going to be a long term. If you want women driving or women, in parliament today in Afghanistan or whatever, you're going to have to wait. You're going to need patience for that.
All right, so Freeze. So I just saw some disconfirmation of my position. So it's so that it was go back. It was where was it? Let's see. No, the other direction. I think other direction.
Down.
Where was it? Yeah. Britain's green belt is choking the economy. All right, I'm just going to say, wow, my hat's off to you. That's what I like about The Economist.
Yeah.
So they got this giant area around London where you can't build anything.
Yeah, the public likes the anti-sprawl policy.
All right.
Okay, I didn't know what the green
right after my own heart. All right, my hat's off to The Economist there.
So London has
talking bad about you guys.
London just has forestry around London and refuses to let people build. That's interesting.
Yeah, so essentially, there's a few people that are grandfathered in before because they built stuff before. But so if you take the train from London to Oxford, you will leave some of the most expensive real estate in the world and end up in a giant area where you're not allowed to do anything. And then eventually you end up in Oxford.
Yeah, that seems wasteful. That seems not efficient. Yeah, where the internet lives, they have. Well, this is a report. They're sort of a combination of a think tank and a media outlet, aren't they? Yeah. Anyway, if you're going to subscribe to The Economist, and you don't have to check it out.
I agree. The Economist is a lot better.
Yeah. And some of these stories on the front page, they don't update as much. This Hollywood losing the battle. I think I read this like a month ago. Let me look what the date is on this. So it's not like the Times where things are gone within a few hours. Yeah, I did see this. This is it's like an animation of like what's happened to the Chinese movie industry. Oh, you know what? Maybe I didn't read this whole thing. I should go back and read this. Yeah, it's pretty good. It is pretty nice graphics. Pretty cool. So China used to import all these Hollywood movies. Now all the top movies in China are Chinese, which has interesting cultural implications.
It's not all, isn't it? But it's like
it's pretty much all.
It's a majority.
No,
like aren't Marvel Cinematic Universe still doing pretty well in China?
If you look at the top 10 movies a year, they're pretty much they've been all Chinese for the last few years. Look, they have the graphic here, so they have
10 most views movies on.
It's going to come. Hold on. Well, what's going on here? Yeah, so if you look at 2022, the number 7, I guess, is by year. I don't know. This graphic's not working. It's not showing up. But the point is, it basically, yeah.
Well, take a look at that. There was a big rebound. Go back.
This is COVID. Let's see.
So you've got this big spike. Okay. And then there's a big rebound, though.
It dropped in COVID, and then it went back. So if you go back to 2011, you see it's 50% of views.
Right. 40%. Whatever that is. Still pretty impressive. I imagine if 40% of American views were Chinese movies.
It is impressive. Yeah. Okay, so let's click.
And definitely goes against the idea of Xi's got a stranglehold on whatever's happening, and that market forces don't matter. Should we switch over to the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, it looks more it looks more lopsided if you just look at the top 10 movies.
Should we do Wall Street Journal, or how about we do PBS? My wife's always watching PBS when she goes to sleep, and it drives me crazy.
Okay. Well, want to check the journal?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let's check the journal. Ukraine. Yeah, a lot of these are the same stories. There is in the journal a sort of a glorification of there's these style things of like wealthy people doing wealthy things. Like there is that. So you the crash of a. Well, this is actually.
Although, is it not really
Yeah.
salacious, and aren't these horrible people?
Sometimes.
So, despite a criminal conviction,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not going to go and put some at least you're less likely to put the continuing wonderful philanthropy of Bill Gates or something like that.
Yeah, let's try PBS.
Okay.
What is this? This is not. I think. Yeah, this is just like advertising for the TV. This is not news. I think we might want NPR. Is that what we want?
Let's see. So, I mean, we're like there's like PBS NewsHour, which is I think what my wife is always watching. Let's see. I don't know if you can get that NewsHour. All right. Let's see. Yeah.
I think that's just.
Is that the same thing?
It's a subset of. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Supreme Court.
Okay.
These pansies are evolving to rely less on pollinators. That's why here's why that might spell trouble.
So those are actually real stories. I mean, they kind of look like spam that other websites just put up for money.
How about this? St. Louis University was built using enslaved labor. Descendants are calling for compensation. I'm sure they are, but yeah, I don't know how much that's news.
Right.
Mansion, immigration, national identity. Americans are increasingly worried about immigration and national identity polls. So this is interesting. It's sort of a right-wing talking point, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Registered voters. Openness from people around the world is essential to national identity. Just 57% of registered voters say U.S. openness is essential to national identity. Democrats 84. Interesting. It's a majority position to national identity. I guess the restrictionists are not representative of American values. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's very it's less sensationalist. There are even this race nonsense. It's very biased. It's very understated. Relatively understated. They've first time calculated how much labor it is. Okay, yeah, I'm going to rely on that.
Is that understated?
All right, so
it's the first calculation of all time. I feel like I've heard other calculations.
Yeah, this is amazing stuff. I mean, they're the people who your wife watches, so your wife likes these kind of articles.
So this is different from the actual television coverage. I mean, as for, she appears to like it. It's like there's no big defense of it, but yeah, she seems to like it.
You want to do some conservative media for fun? You want to do New York Post?
Sure, let's do it. I mean, a lot of my complaints will be the same. The political bias will be different, but in terms of just the sheer idiocy.
Well, here the Biden thing. Here, look at the coverage of the Biden, which the headline was.
Yeah, I mean, New York Post, like self-consciously, is more of a tabloid than a newspaper.
What is the serious conservative news? Like, there is not even one we can think of that's not sensational.
National Review, maybe.
That's pretty. You're going pretty far down compared to the New York Times.
All right,
okay.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, fine. We'll do your New York Post.
It's pretty sad. These people don't have a single newspaper. Like the Wall Street Journal, right? But that's it.
So growing up in LA, the usual view is the LA Times is the left-wing paper and the Daily News is the right-wing paper. But I don't know. That's 30 years ago.
LA Daily News. I never even heard of it. Is it even?
And there's Daily News. Daily News, unless it went out of business. It's possible it went out of business, actually.
Rough sledding for Speaker Johnson. And look, you know what they do? The conservative sites. Look, this looks like a story, but it's not. It's a sponsored content, and it's so stupid.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yes. Well, this is your My Pillow thing, right?
Yeah. Turn on. So here you have this trans stuff, Biden willfully retained it, but no charges. So they added some context to the Biden story, which they want to make it more scandalous, right? He willfully retained and disclosed classified info. Charges of illegal immigrants, attack on a New York police officer, Democratic advantages with Black Hispanics hit all-time low. So it's cheerleading. It's cheerleading for conservative stuff. It's interesting, what happened in National Review. They were like never Trump, but they're just like Trump-like now. There's nothing really particularly distinguished about them.
I think it is fair to say that magazines are very open about their politics, and it's, to my mind, less objectionable as a result because it's so well labeled. Whereas newspapers are so self-righteous in their democracy dies in darkness. This isn't just for some people; it's for everybody.
I guess we can't even think of a single conservative newspaper besides Wall Street Journal. That's not a tabloid like the Post. Maybe the
well, even there, the standard view is the Wall Street Journal is a totally normal left-wing paper, except for the editorial page.
Yeah, I know that's what people say. Yeah, we could try the Telegraph because we have to leave the United States.
All right.
There's a Telegraph. Zelensky. They have a podcast on the Ukraine war for that's connected to the Telegraph. It's much more biased even than the media. I mean, it's like, how is Ukraine going to win? It's like sarcastic. It's like it's covering every day what happened in Ukraine, but it's like sarcastic comments about Russia. It'll be like, Putin is doing this. Oh yes, we all know what a trustworthy guy that is. They're not even. They're not even trying to. They're not even trying to hide it. Tucker Carlson landed the West's most controversial.
This one actually I like because they give you forecasts which are falsifiable. When they just say that they're going to
forecast.
So, if you go back not to the British coverage of the Supreme Court, right? So, Supreme Court poised to reject Trump's election disqualification. I don't remember any of the U.S. media being nearly that blunt. And that's totally consistent with what betting markets say. So, betting markets keep saying that Trump's at 90%. So, all this stuff is really.
I thought I saw one of them where they said.
They use the word poised, but I don't think it was poised to reject.
But no, I was saying the same thing. It was basically that there was no that the justices were skeptical of the
arguments. See, it's very different to say justices are skeptical versus they're poised to reject. Skeptical could just be an attitude or an affectation, whereas saying, "Look, you know what's going to happen to people?" They're going to say no.
Well, decapitation of baby during exodus. Now that's a horrible story.
Yeah,
forceful delivery, ruled to be murder. Okay. Maybe I should read the Telegraph. Yeah, it's interesting. Drag queen workshop for 11-year-old.
Oh man.
Okay. All right. I think anything else you want to cover, Brian?
Let's see. I mean, I feel like we've done a good job, and I think I understand you better. I think you understand me better. Overall, I'll say that there's something about the online versions that seems a bit better to me. So when I read the front page of a print version, they don't have this luxury of constantly updating it. And so it does seem like it more encapsulates what the media is really thinking. The online version seems more less graven in stone. The actual physical newspapers strike me as considerably worse and more biased now that I go compare and contrast.
So let me clarify or maybe slightly adjust my position. When I say the media is honest and good, the media is better than the alternative media, or trying to come up with political and social opinions without paying attention to the media or mainstream institutions.
What opinions would people have if they just didn't listen to the media at all?
That's what I was going to say. Compared to blissful indifference, I would encourage that. I don't think my audience is the blissful indifference to the news kind of people. So that's not the audience that I'm writing for. But
most people, when they complain about the media, they're not worried about themselves. They feel like, I can handle this. I've got the common sense to see through the bias. It's the other people.
No, but they want people to go. They want people to go to alternative sources. They want people to go to conservative media or Twitter, and that's worse. That is clearly worse. It's going to make you much stupider. In general,
maybe a thing they're doing. I think a lot of critics of the media, it's not just me, they're saying, look, these people are not reliable, don't deserve respect, just stop watching them, they suck.
Yeah. I think that's right. But then people might not listen to me. They should listen to us. They should listen to ideas, but not the media, right? They should not listen to the daily news, but they should listen to intellectuals who take time to have something important to say about the universe. That's what we should be telling them.
Right. And by the way, as I said at the end of my original piece, if you do work in the mainstream media and you're watching this, I think you're probably awesome. I think you're probably pushing things in a better direction. It's the people that would never watch this that are terrible.
Yeah. There are
coworkers that would just say, like, how could you possibly say there's anything wrong with us? Those are the people that are the problem. If you at least have the self-awareness to wonder, are we doing something wrong? Then I think you're way above the top half, probably top 5%.
Okay. So, I think we've come to something of an understanding. This was a fun exercise.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like,
anything else?
Like the time that I just went over the Washington Post with the Pulitzer Prize winner there, I felt like I just crushed him. Just maybe everything was working my way, but I think it also was the physical newspaper is more biased than the online version. which
what was he saying? He was more pro media than I am.
Really, he just started off by saying, "Oh, it's just ridiculous, total myth. The media is left wing bias," and then every headline was like, "There's just no way that even a moderate person would write that headline."
Yeah, I would not. Yeah, I would not argue something that's stupid that it doesn't have a left wing bias. Yeah, I'm taking the premise that people care about the news and they want to know something about the world and they want to know the daily on a daily basis what's going on, not necessarily just read summaries or historical books looking at previous decades or long-term trends or
how about just the freaking Wikipedia article. When Tyler came in and he said, "Oh my God, what was it? Iran was it Iran bomb Pakistan first, the other way around?"
I think it was Iran first.
Yeah, Iran bombed. He came in like Iran has bombed Pakistan. I read the Wikipedia article. Like they're bombing some proxies. They're not bombing the actual Pakistani government. That's pretty misleading. Yeah. And then I found out all about the Balochistan conflict, and I read the article on that, and I thought I knew quite a bit more. My knowledge of British imperial history of the subcontinent was sufficient that I did remember there was a place called Balochistan, or I think they used to call it Baluchistan. But to find out what's happened there in the last 80 years, that was all news to me.
Yeah, well, it's a big
like even for like the most salacious incidents, I still find Wikipedia to be much better in terms of an aggregator, and also like when there's conflict on the evidence, they generally will go and tell you about the conflict. So I like that a lot better.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this was fun. this was fun, Brian. Was Tyler, by the way, was he worried that we were about Iran and Pakistan were going to have a big war?
I wouldn't say that he was worried. Often when there's horrible news, he does get this perverse sense of, oh, something's happening. This is nothing to be happy about. And like he'll sort of deny, oh, I'm not happy, haha.
Well, I can't help but feel that. I mean, it is fun. I'll admit it is fun. You shouldn't be happy that there's wars. And of course, if you ask me, would I start a war just to get a laugh? I would say no. But I can't deny that there is something intoxicating about big things happening in the world.
Yeah, whereas to me, it's just where I feel worst about humanity. It's like such a disgrace.
Yeah. Like elections. Like you hate elections.
The last time where there was a conflict where I actually was happy, but I will defend it, was when Prigozhin was marching towards Moscow with no apparent opposition.
Yeah,
I go to bed and like, wow, and I wake up and I look at the map. Oh my God, that guy's he can do it. He can actually do it. And there's no way. And like, I'm reading, like, no one's resisting this guy. Like, this could be we were actually in Poland, like we were in Berlin when things are finally getting worked out. And I'm there telling my wife, look, if Prigozhin wins, the Russian thing collapses, and we are going straight to Kiev. Like, we missed the Berlin Wall falling. We've got to go to the party in Kiev. And she's actually getting this look of this crazy guy is going to go and drag her whole family to Kiev 1,000 miles away. And I'm like, look at the map. It's only 15 hours. We can totally do it. We've got to do this. We're going to miss this incredible historic event. And then she's like, we're not going there. And I'm like, okay, fine. We'll just go to Lviv. That's my compromise.
It was an amazing political science experiment. I mean, that's the way I was sort of seeing it. It's like, oh, this guy just says, I'm in charge, and just marches, and like, will people just, how hollow are these dictatorships? It's not going to be. I mean, there's probably not going to be another opportunity like that. I was shocked that he.
And just that he could be so dumb as to trust Putin. Does he not know the adage, when you shoot the king, you must kill him?
He was probably shocked by his own success. He probably had oh my God, the country is collapsing in front of me and I'm going to die. It was probably like that. I mean, I don't think he could have.
Well, I've got Lukashenko's words. I actually got to do an interview with a Russian who's renounced his citizenship and lives in Ukraine now. And he said he not only he met Prigozhin personally and signed a contract with him back when Prigozhin was a restaurateur. So wow, that's quite a story.
Well, what did he say? What was he like to deal with?
It was only a few minutes. It was just like I'm going to sell you some beer, great. And so there was nothing more to it other than this guy knew the guy that could have changed the course of world history if he just stuck to his guns for 3 more days.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun, Brian. I hope people benefit from it. Again, if you are listening to this, you have to sort of watch the video. And I think I'm going to release it to my paid subscribers. Eventually, not before long, I will make it available to everyone. And it was good talking to you, Brian. Until next time.
Always a pleasure, Richard. Have fun. All right.